Alright, we have time for another book tonight, and this one is titled The Steadfast Tin Soldier. Once upon a time, there were 25 tin soldiers. They were brothers and had been made from the same large tin spoon. They all stood very straight in their elegant red and blue uniforms, shouldering their little tin guns. The first thing they ever heard was a boy shouting, "Tin soldiers!" as he lifted the lid off the box where they were lying. Tin soldiers! He had received them as a birthday present. The boy set the tin soldiers out on the table. They were all exactly alike except for one, which had only one leg, for he was made last, and there had not been enough tin to finish him properly. Nevertheless, he stood as straight as all the others. The table...
All of them have two legs. Those ones.
Those ones. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's awesome because they can pretend, oh, that guy got his leg cut off.
True.
In battle.
For toys. The table where the tin soldiers stood was covered with toys. There were bright-colored tops, china dolls, and a stuffed bear. But best of all, there was a paper castle. It was so wonderfully constructed, that little rooms could be seen through its tiny windows. In front of it, a number of painted paper trees stood around a small mirror, which was meant to represent a lake. Small wax swans swimming on the lake were reflected in it, but most beautiful of all was the tiny paper dancer who stood in the door of the castle. Her dress had a skirt of white tulle, and a blue silk ribbon encircled her little shoulders like a shawl. The ribbon was fastened with a bright silver sequin the size of her face. Her arms were stretched out before her, and one leg was lifted so high the little tin soldier could not see it. She must have only one leg like me, he thought. She's the wife for me. Then he sighed, but she lives in a castle, while I have only a box, which I must share with all my brothers. That would never do for her. Still, I must get to know her. So he stretched himself flat on the table behind a snuff box so he could see her better. He watched as she stood very still, and even though her leg was raised high in the air, she didn't once lose her balance. When evening came, the children of the house put away the other tin soldiers and went to bed. That was when all the toys had their fun. They amused one another by giving balls, fighting battles, and paying visits. The tin soldiers rattled in their box, for they wanted to join in. The stuffed bear did somersaults, and the nutcrackers played leapfrog. Even the pencil got up and danced a jig. Only the tin soldier and the dancer remained steadfast in their places. The clock struck 12, and a strange thing happened. The lid of the snuff box sprang open, but instead of snuff inside, there was a little goblin who poked out his head and stared right at the tin soldier. "Keep your eyes to yourself," the goblin said, but the tin soldier pretended not to hear. "Just you wait until tomorrow," the goblin said in a terrible voice, and he retreated into the snuff box.
Where's the snuff box?
It's an old box that I think they used to keep tobacco in. I could be wrong, though. The next morning, the children picked up the little tin soldier and set him on the windowsill. I cannot say whether it was the goblin's doing or not, but all of a sudden a draft came up and knocked the tin soldier out of the window. Down he fell 3 stories into the street below. It was terrible. He landed with his little tin gun stuck between 2 cobblestones and his one leg pointing up in the air. The little boy and one of the maids ran outside to look for him. They both stepped right next to him, but neither could find him. If he'd only shouted, "Help, help!" they would have spotted him, but he was too proud to do that when he was in uniform. It began to rain hard, and soon there was quite a downpour. When it ended, two boys came running up the street. "Look," one of them cried, "there's a tin soldier. Let's make him a boat to sail in." So they made a boat out of an old sheet of newspaper and put the tin soldier in it. Then they sent him sailing down the gutter while they ran alongside, clapping their hands.
What's a gutter?
Sailing down the gutter. It's like the part next to the street where the water flows through, like they have here. Gutter, and how quickly the water flowed. The little paper boat rocked from side to side and bobbed up and down. Sometimes it spun around so quickly that the little tin soldier felt dizzy. Yet he stood up straight and bravely shouldered his little gun, for he was a true soldier. Suddenly, the boat was pulled into a large drain and went whirling down a tunnel that was even darker than the tin soldier's box. "What now?" he thought. I'm sure this is all that goblin's doing. Oh, if only the little dancer were here with me, then I would not care if it were twice as dark." Just then a water rat, which lived in the drain, came chasing him. "Have you got a passport?" it squeaked, gnashing its teeth horribly. "Give it to me at once." But the tin soldier only stared straight ahead and clung to his little gun. The rat swam after him, shouting, "Stop him! He has not paid the toll or shown his passport." But the current only rushed on stronger than ever, carrying the little paper boat with it. The tin soldier could see a light at the end of the tunnel, but he could also hear a terrible roaring sound, loud enough to frighten the bravest man. Below, there was a large canal. The water from the drain plunged into it so deeply that it was like a giant waterfall to the little tin soldier. But he could not stop his little boat. Even though he was sure this would be his end, he stood as tall as he could to show that he really was a good soldier. Down tumbled the little boat. It whirled around and filled with water. The paper began to break apart, and it was clear that nothing could save the boat from sinking. Soon, the little tin soldier was up to his neck in water. As the waves closed over his head, he thought again of the pretty little dancer, and he seemed to hear the words of the old song, "Farewell, true soldier, ever brave, for now you must come to your grave." Just then, a great big fish swam by and swallowed him. How dark it was in the fish's belly! Much darker than the tunnel, and much narrower too. The tin soldier lay still and made sure to hold tightly to his gun. The fish darted this way and that, but then after a while it became very still. Much later, a great flash of lightning seemed to pass through it, and the tin soldier found himself in bright daylight again. He heard a voice say, "Why, look, here's the tin soldier." The fish had been caught and taken to market. There it had been sold to the cook, who brought it home to the kitchen and cut it open with a big knife. She picked up the tin soldier and carefully carried him upstairs. Although everyone was eager to see the amazing tin soldier who traveled in the belly of a fish, he was not at all proud. They set him down on the table, and, as many strange things happen in this world, he saw that he was back in the very room where he'd started. The same children were standing over him, and the very same toys sat on the table. There was the colored top, the stuffed bear, and of course the paper castle. In the doorway, the pretty little dancer stood on one leg, with her other lifted high in the air. She had not moved at all, for she was as steadfast as he. When he saw this, the tin soldier was so touched that if he could have, he would have wept tears of tin, but instead he only stared at the little dancer, and she stared back, and neither of them said a word. All of a sudden, one of the little boys picked up the tin soldier and tossed him into the fire. The goblin must have made him do it, for I can think of no other reason. The flames roared around the little tin soldier. The heat seemed terrible, but whether that was because of the fire...
Yeah, he's pooping again. You gave that baby too much food. What are you doing?
We're recording you.
Why?
Because you're on an audiobook.
We can't do that. Okay, finish up. Wow, you had too much sun today. Look at Chris's face. How did that happen?
Mama, stop!
They have got...
We're recording a book.
Josh, it's 7:16.
Okay. Where were we? Flames. The fire or the warmth of his feelings. He could not tell. Soon the bright colors of his uniform faded, but that might have been from sorrow. He looked at the dancer, and she looked back at him. He could feel himself melting away, but nevertheless he stood at attention with his gun at his shoulder for as long as he could. Just then the door to the room flew open, and a draft caught up the little dancer. She fluttered across the room like an angel right into the stove next to the little tin soldier. The flames flared, and in an instant she was gone, while he slowly melted away into a lump of tin. The next morning, when the maid cleaned the ashes from the stove, she found him in the shape of a little tin heart. All that was left of the dancer was her silver sequin burned black as coal. The end. Boy, nobody promised a happy ending there.
Why?
That's sad. They both ended up in the fire. But they did end up together.
Yeah.
The tin soldier and the little dancer.
And a paper dancer.
And the paper dancer, yep.
Tin,
Yep,
and paper.
yep.
Why did they all do it? Why did they all end up there?
Well, he got thrown in, right? I don't know why they decided to do that. That was awful.
Yeah.
And the door, you know how when the door flings open, it makes some wind? Well, that made her fly off from where she was standing because she was so light. She was made of paper and landed in the fire. And you know how fast paper burns, much faster than tin. Right?
Paper was just...
Yeah, and a hot fire very quickly. What do you think? Did you like that story?
Because in the instant, she was gone.
She was gone.
The book
Yeah.
died immediately.